You know I'm spoiling you guys now. I think this is going to be 3 video podcasts 3 days in a row. 3 video podcasts 3 days in a row. I think this is only the second time I've done that since I started doing video podcasts. Matter of fact, I want to say this is only the second or third time I've done 3 video podcasts in the same week ever. Yeah, the most video podcasts I usually do in 1 week is 2 video podcasts. This one is going to return to my regular format where I'm going to give about 15 to 20 minutes of this video podcast for free. The general public will be able to see it. And then the remainder of the video podcast, you will have to be at least a $5 subscriber. A $5 subscriber to my Patreon page. A $5 subscriber to my Patreon page. And then my very next video podcast, which will be video podcast number 35, I'll do that probably Monday or Tuesday of next week. That's going to be for my $10 subscribers, my $10 subscribers. So today will be for my $5. My next one will be for my $10 subscribers. The main subject matter I want to talk about in this video podcast is the whole notion of what's known in the manosphere as red pill rage. Red pill rage. But first, I'm probably going to spend most of the free portion doing a little ranting again. You know me and my rants. See, somebody wrote me and said, Alan, you seem to have a problem with guys who are frustrated with women's behavior. And that's curious to me because I thought you're a dating coach and I thought you empathize with guys who are frustrated with women's bullshit behavior. Well, here's the thing. That's half true and half not true. Here's the simple deal, and I've said this before, so this would be at least my second, if not my third or fourth time saying this. If you're a guy who is to some degree frustrated with your love life, frustrated with your social life, and frustrated with your overall social life, and you're willing to admit that, you're willing to openly acknowledge that and admit that, and you come to me and say, hey, Alan, I'm curious how your books can help me and how your Skype and telephone consultations can help me and how your one-on-one face-to-face coaching can help me, then I'm all ears. I'm all ears. That's what I do. That's what I do. Matter of fact, my links are in the description section below. All my relevant and important links are in my discussion section below. Before I get started, I gotta... you can see that the top half of the bottle is clear because I've already drank half the bottle, but this is my stuff. This is my stuff. Shine strawberry lemonade. This is my favorite. Not only would I say this is my favorite flavor of Vitamin Water Zero, but based on how frequently this gets sold out at all of my local grocery stores, I would say it's everyone's favorite flavor. This is the #1 flavor that gets sold out the quickest at least 3 or 4 of my local grocery stores. All the other flavors, they stay there for days, weeks. But this flavor, within 2 or 3 days after they stock it, it's gone. It's gone. The only time you can buy this is usually if you get there the very first day they stock it. Otherwise, 90% chance it's going to be gone. Excuse me. my laptop. I don't know if you guys allow notifications on your laptop, but I get all these notifications on my laptop, man. Be distracting me while I'm doing my video podcast. But as I was saying, if you're a single heterosexual male, or in some cases a heterosexual male who might be in a long-term relationship or married, because I have helped some married guys and guys who are in relationships, but I predominantly work with single heterosexual men. If you're willing to come to me and say, again, acknowledge that, yeah, I have some frustrations as it relates to my love life, some frustrations as it relates to my sex life, some frustrations as it relates to my overall social interactions with women. Yeah, I'm more than enthusiastically willing to help you. Here's the guys I have the most criticism of, and this relates to my topic yesterday, some of you MGTOW types, and even some of you non-MGTOW types. I think it was video podcast number 28, 29, when I made this point. Some of you guys do what's known as talking out of both sides of your mouth. You talk out of both sides of your mouth. And in more specific terms, what that means is there's some guys, including a lot of MGTOW types, that will write comments like, well, it ain't like I'm some kind of guy who's a total loser with women. I get my share of pussy, but at the same time, I'm MGTOW. Motherfucker, you might get other people to believe that shit, but you ain't gonna ever get Alan Roger Currie to believe that shit. Not only have I seen YouTube commenters make those type of comments, but there's either at least 2, 3, maybe even 4 guys who are YouTube hosts that try to express those type of sentiments. On one hand, they'll try to give the impression that they're a ladies' man or a womanizer, or that they're getting, or basically that they're satisfied with how their love life and sex life is going. But then they'll turn around and do all this whining and bitching about women's behavior. Dude, those two do not go together. I'm here to tell you. Those two do not go together. That's like a motherfucker who hasn't paid taxes in the last 10 years complaining about how high taxes are. That's what it's like. That's like a rich motherfucker complaining about the price of food at a restaurant, or the price of clothing, or really the price of anything. If he can afford to buy anything he wants to. When you're rich, price don't matter. I mean, it's ridiculous is what it is. It's ridiculous. At minimum, it's contradictory. At maximum, it's oxymoronic. To suggest that you are satisfied with either the quality of women you're attracting and having sex with, and or the quantity of women you're attracting and having sex with, but then you turn around and all you do is bitch about various aspects of women's behavior. That don't make no sense, man. I'm here to tell you, if nobody else has been direct enough to tell you, that don't make no sense. Starting with my high school days, I have never, ever, ever hung around a guy that was highly successful with women that was always bitching about women. I've never hung around not one guy that was like that. I've never hung around a guy who was getting a lot of pussy, who was always like talking about what's wrong with women and what frustrates him about women and all that. I've never hung around a guy like that. Ever. That would be like a guy who's been a street pimp for the last 10 to 15 years, having a podcast program where all he does is bitch about how hoish women are. That wouldn't even make sense. That wouldn't even make sense. That would be like a guy who's a male adult film star, male porn star, having a podcast program talking about how prudish women are. That wouldn't even make sense. It's like a guy who's been a gigolo for the last 5, 10, 15 years having a podcast complaining about how materialistic women are and how much of a gold digger they are. That wouldn't even make sense. You understand what I'm saying? That don't even make sense, man. That don't make sense. And that's how I feel about some of you. Using those 3 analogies I just gave, that's how I feel about you guys. Some of you guys. In the same way I would feel if I saw a street pimp with a podcast emphasizing how sexually promiscuous women are, or a male porn star talking about how prudish women are, or a gigolo talking about how materialistic women are. That's how I feel about some of you MGTOWs and even non-MGTOW types. On one end, you harshly complaining about aspects of women's behavior that frustrates you, but at the same time, you like, yeah, but I ain't no loser though. I get my share of women. I get any woman I want to. I've had literally at least 2 or 3, 4 guys I've read comments where guys will say, I'm MGTOW, but I have my way with women. I have all kinds of women throwing pussy at me. No, you don't. Quit lying to yourself. You are lying to yourself. You are fucking lying to yourself. You wouldn't be MGTOW if you was having your way with women. You wouldn't be MGTOW. You wouldn't even know what the fuck MGTOW was if you was having your way with women. Shit, I had to have someone explain to me what MGTOW was. I didn't know what the fuck MGTOW was until I think I told you yesterday on yesterday's podcast. The first time I learned about what MGTOW was, I want to say it was right after I dropped my book, The Possibility of Sex. Because a lot of guys would write me feedback and say, hey, Alan, this book of yours, this is one of the best MGTOW related books I've ever read. And I was basically like, what the fuck is MGTOW? And that's when guys enlightened me to the fact that it meant men going their own way. And when it comes to that, I'm like my fellow dating coach, Steve Dean Williams. He always asks the question, where are you going, though? I mean, where are you going? You say you going your own way. Where the fuck you going? I mean, in other words, if you're a heterosexual male, who else you gonna fuck but women? You gonna fuck animals? You gonna become voluntarily bisexual and start fucking other men? I mean, where the fuck you going? I mean, can you live the rest of your life as a monk? If you're capable of doing that, good luck. More power to you. I'm not capable of living my life as a monk and be asexual or celibate for the rest of my life. Now, there's some guys in the Bible, in the Christian Bible, who were monks. Jesus, for all practical purposes, was a monk. At least according to the Christian Bible, Jesus Christ didn't get laid. He was alive for 33 years and he didn't get laid. I want to say there was a guy named Paul in the Bible who was a monk. There's a couple of biblical things. Then on the flip side, in the Christian Bible, you had a guy like Solomon. Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. He had 1,000 sexual companions at his disposal. 1,000. He was macking in biblical days. Shoot, what kind of vitamins? I want to know what kind of vitamins and Red Bull drinks that dude was drinking to sexually satisfy 1,000. I mean, when you consider that there's only 365 days in a year, if I had sex with 2 different women every day for a year, that don't come up to 1,000. And Solomon he had 700 wives and 300. You don't think he had some player haters? Remember I did that video podcast about men hating on ladies, men, and womanizers? Dude, I know some dudes wanted to kill Solomon. I know they did. They're like, damn, how come this dude is monopolizing all the fucking pussy and shit? God damn, Solomon, come on, man. Share the pussy wealth, man. Come on, dude. Share some. Solomon might have been the first guy to say, hey, I think I'm going to come up with a term called pimping, where I share my pussy for a price. I gotta stop making fun of the Bible. I don't want no lightning bolts hitting me. Yeah, man, but yeah, again, plain and simply, man, I'm not buying you guys who are doing what's known as double talk. That's what's known as double talk, man. You saying you having your way with women. You saying you're attracting the quality of women you want to attract and or the quantity of women you want to attract, but yet you're always talking about what's fucked up about women. Here's my thing, and I'm not going to spend too much time because I'm going to end this free portion and I'm going to go into my Patreon exclusive portion. But my Patreon exclusive portion is going to center around just staying out of the mode 4 zone. What I call the mode 4 zone, mode 4 behavior. Because basically, red pill, what's known in the manosphere as red pill rage, is essentially the same thing as my concept of the mode 4 zone. Those two concepts are essentially the same thing. If you're experiencing red pill rage, that also means, for my terminology, you're in the mode 4 zone. You're in the mode 4 zone, man. See, I said this in one of my very early video podcasts, like one of my very early ones. Matter of fact, to this day, I want to say, I think all of my video podcasts are good. I'm biased. I think all of them are good. But if I had to evaluate them based on feedback, excuse me, I would say arguably the number one video podcast I received the most feedback, the most provocative / controversial feedback on was my video podcast called The Myth of the Prudish and Strictly Monogamy-Oriented Good Girl. The Myth. I think you can only see that now as a Patreon subscriber. That's the video podcast, probably arguably more than any other video podcast. And there's been maybe 2 or 3 others that came close. But yeah, in terms of both a combination of public feedback in the comment section below, combined with private feedback I got. And again, you can always give me private feedback either through my Patreon direct message, Facebook direct message, or email coaching@mode1.net, MODEONE.net, coaching@mode1.net. Yeah, most feedback I got, that was a blend of both enthusiastic, supportive feedback and critical feedback. Guys like that just didn't like what I had to say in that video. Yeah, that video podcast, it riled up a lot of people. But I'm not going to rehash everything I said in there, but one of the things I said in that video podcast is this. This is where I criticize men. Men like to criticize women, but here's why I criticize men. Now, I've done it for years. Here's the simple reality of men, and this is what leads to a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of this whining and complaining and just general bitching about women. Men have a harder time handling the reality of women's true sexual nature than women do men's true sexual nature. I wouldn't as much say that as an opinion as much as I would express it as a fact. They do. And I've had some men that have admitted that. They don't even try to deny it. They say, yeah, Alan, you're right. I do. A lot of men cannot handle the reality of women's true sexual nature. And that's essentially what I broke down in that video podcast called The Myth of the Prudish and Strictly Monogamy-Oriented Good Girl. I'm not going to get into all the details, but what I essentially said is that See, most men, particularly what's known in manosphere as blue pill type guys, a lot of blue pill guys, because of misinformation, invalid beliefs, misinformation, and invalid social programming, they grew up believing that women's default state is to be prudish and strictly monogamy oriented, and they believe that the women who are very kinky and promiscuous and polyamorous are the anomalies, the exceptions to the rule. And what I basically said in that video is that in reality it's just the opposite. It is just the opposite. Women's default state is to be kinky and promiscuous and polyamorous. That's the default state. The anomalies are the women who are genuinely prudish and strictly monogamy oriented. Those women are the anomalies in society. Those are the exceptions to the rule. But most women, man, at their core are kinky creatures, and they're promiscuous and or polyamorous creatures. And again, for those not familiar with the term polyamory, polyamorous means you're more into long-term non-monogamous sex. That's what polyamory means. Polyamory means you're into long-term non-monogamous sex. Promiscuity means you're into short-term non-monogamous sex. So that's the difference between promiscuity and polyamory. But yeah, most women, that's their nature, man. Truthfully, if you go beyond human beings, that's the nature of most species in society. There's exceptions, but most animal species in society are not strictly monogamous. I want to say there might be a handful of animal. You know who got a good book that talks about both human beings and animals in this regard is Dr. Christopher Ryan, who was actually a former guest on my Blog Talk Radio show. He wrote a book called Sex at Dawn. Sex at Dawn. It's a really good book. He talks about the whole concept of monogamy versus people's monogamous nature versus people's promiscuous and or polyamorous nature, as well as he examines animals in that same regard. A book I always promote, Daniel Bergner. He has a book called What Women Want. And one of the things he emphasizes in his book, What Women Want, is he said the same thing essentially that I just said a couple minutes ago. He said, I can't remember his exact words, so I'll be paraphrasing, but essentially in his book he says, the problem with a lot of men is that most men think women are naturally prudish and naturally strictly monogamy oriented, and they're not. Women are socially programmed and brainwashed by their parents, the people at their church or religious institution, and just other influential people in society. Women are brainwashed to present themselves as the prudish, monogamy-oriented good girl. But that is not their natural. They don't come out the womb with those intentions and tendencies. Men and women come out of the womb with the same exact sexual desires, interests, and intentions. The only thing that changes them is their social programming. But when they come out the womb, they're virtually exactly the same in terms of their sexual proclivities. Or proclivities, I should say. So, and going back to Red Pill Rage, the main reason that exists, and I would say the same thing about Mode 4 misogyny, is that on the male end, a lot of you guys, here's the three things you guys cannot accept, and then I'm gonna wrap this up and go into my Patreon exclusive portion. A lot of you men, number one, cannot accept the fact that many women in society, and I would go as far as say most women in society, have just as strong a desire to be promiscuous as you do. A lot of you guys can't handle that. You can't handle that women want to fuck just as many different guys as you want to fuck different women. You can't handle that. More specifically, a lot of you guys can't handle the sexually duplicitous nature of women. That's one of the biggest things that fuels red pill rage, and along with that, I would say mode 4, anger and frustration. You can't handle the sexual duplicity of women. And again, for those who, I think 99% of people who watch me should know what that term means. But if you're a new listener, to be sexually duplicitous means a woman shows one side of her sexual self to one type of guy and shows a different side of her sexual self to another type of guy. For example, a lot of women, if they're in the company of a womanizing alpha male, they will very quickly reveal that they have a kinky side and a promiscuous and or polyamorous side. But when they're around a guy who's a naive and financially generous beta male, they're going to present themselves as the prudish good girl. They're going to present themselves as this prudish, strictly monogamy-oriented good girl. So the fact that they're acting two different ways with two different men means that a woman is sexually duplicitous. See, before the days of the internet, I got an article I'm going to post below. I wrote on the Negro Manosphere. I basically, it talks about how the internet is what changed everything. Internet changed everything. And the final thing, men can't handle, they can't handle women's sexuality at all. The real, true sexual nature. They can't handle the fact that women are sexually duplicitous. And the third and final thing is what's known as women's hypergamous nature. Hypergamous nature. And I've talked about that multiple times. What that simply means is that relates to what's known as the 80-20 rule theory. And the 80-20 rule theory is representative of this concept that roughly 20% of the men in society are going to be able to fuck women without promising them any type of long-term monogamy and without offering to spend any significant amount of money on them. The other 80% of men in society, if they hope to get laid or expect to get laid, they're going to have to do one of those two things, if not both. They're either going to have to promise a woman long-term monogamy in order to get sex from them, and or they're going to have to offer women financial assistance, financial support, financial compensation, financial security. Now, some men accept that. They just accept that not all men have the same role. I remember I had this user in my comment section, I think his name was Jay Smizzle. He said that one time. He said, a lot of beta males need to accept the fact that they're not going to have it like most womanizing alpha males. Like I told you, when I did my interview with Big Mike on Max City Limits, he talked about that. He said some men got it like that and other men don't. And men just got to accept that. But here's the problem. And here's why you have red pill rage. Some men can't accept that. They can't. Some men can't and or won't accept that. It's like you can say I give you an example. Elliot Rodger, the guy who killed those people in Santa Barbara. He couldn't accept that. He was a classic example of a guy in George Sodini in Pittsburgh. Those two guys were guys, they couldn't accept the fact of the reality of the 80-20 rule theory. They couldn't accept that. They couldn't accept the idea that a lot of guys' attitude is, well, why do I got to go out on 5 dates with a woman to get some pussy when this other guy is getting pussy within 2 hours after he meets a woman? Why do I have to put a ring on a woman's finger to get her to agree to have sex with me on a regular basis and to get her to agree to give birth to my children when some other guy can have sex with her without spending no money on her, without putting no ring on her finger, and he got her to pop out 1 or 2 kids out of her womb without even being married to her? Why does a guy like Roger Currie able to get a woman to suck his dick in a grocery store or a major international airport, and I got to pay a woman $150 to suck my dick? A lot of guys, man, they can't handle that shit, man. They can't handle that shit. And that's why you have red pill rage and mode 4, anger and frustration. And with this point, I'm going to end. And this was a long free portion, so you guys getting a long ass free portion. So for about the next 25-30 minutes, it'll be exclusively for my $5 Patreon subscribers. So if you're a Patreon subscriber, keep watching. For those who just watching this long ass free portion, because normally I don't want to go more than 20 minutes for my free portion, but I went 31 minutes. Hashtag men need to accept the reality of women. That's the hashtag for this free portion. Men need number 2. Men need, then the number 2, accept the reality of women. Again, man, that's most of you guys who are suffering from one degree to another of what's known as red pill rage, or what I more so refer to as mode 4 anger and frustration, is because you again, I'm gonna recap. You can't accept the general promiscuous and or polyamorous nature of women sexually. You can't accept the duplicitous nature of women sexually. And you can't accept the hypergamous nature of women sexually. You can't accept it. See, there's 2 types of guys. There's guys who say, well, let me shut up. Say that for the Patreon portion. Take care.
Yes, sir.
Say it again.
Yes, sir.
Who's the king?
Alan, you're the king.
Say it again.
Alan, you're the king. You're dominating me.
Say it again.
Alan, you're dominating me right now. Mode 1.
Mode 1.
Daddy, can I go, please? You're the king.
Say it again.
Oh, oh, you're the fucking king. Yes. 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 Oh. Oh. Oh.
You're the king, Alan.
AKA the king of verbal seduction. You know, it's the tone of your voice, how seductive your intonations are, the vibrations that you could just reach out over the phone lines and stroke a woman's breast just by the sound of your voice, how you could make her pussy so wet just by the sound of your voice. That's actually very hot.
So you said my show was what?
I said your show is powerful.
Oh, say it again.
Your show is powerful.
I bet the king would fuck me really good.
Oh, yeah. Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie.
Oh, yeah. Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie. The king.
The king.
The king.